All right, there we go. Okay, excellent. Okay, so if you want to try this out afterwards, the things that you're going to need you would need for today. Today's material is RStudio and for what I'm doing, GitHub Desktop, which is going to get you all your Git sort of things you need to interact with Git. If you don't want to use GitHub Desktop, then you need to go and download the Git for whatever operating system that you're on. Okay, great. So let's hop over. Okay, so the objective for these workshops is to help you get some tips to do the things in that blue bar there, which is to make your code more compartmentalized, better documented, more extendable so that you yourself and other people can build off it, make your work more reproducible, and make it more robust. We're not going to cover all that today. This is kind of over the 5 weeks. And when you listen to this material, like I would say, like don't think about trying to be perfect, right? Don't try to think about like trying to do all these things. Hopefully you can pick up one tip, one thing that you can change about how your workflow is that's going to improve things. Okay, so let's start with RStudio. Okay, so now, how do I get rid of this? Go away. Okay, great. All right, so I've just opened up RStudio, and this is basically what I see. This would be just kind of your default. And RStudio is a platform for interacting with R, and it's the one that's really widely used, and it's really widely used for good reason, and that's because it's going to make your life a lot easier. It's going to really help you make your code more compartmentalized and much more organized. And if you're going to be creating things that are intended for other people to use, then you're going to need to be documenting your code, and RStudio is going to really help you do that. So I would just go ahead and adopt this just because it's so widely used if you're not using it already. Okay, so just an overview of what you see when with these panels here and what they do. So let me get new panel here. Okay. So what I just did was I clicked new file, which is this plus up here, and I just started an R script. And so what you've got up here is your R code. So this is, I've opened an R script, so I could just type in, something like that. Nothing's going to happen because it's just like a file with my R code in it. Down here, I have the console where I'm interacting directly with R. So if I type something here like 1 plus 1, oops, not 1 equals 1, 1 plus 1, I'm trying to see that. But here, this is just my script. And then over here, I'm going to have my environment. And if I create something, let's create something, let's just say A equals 1. So now you're going to see this over here. So you can see exactly what you have in your environment. And if I do remove A. All right. Then next, you've got this little tab down in the lower right, And that is going to show you your files in your working directory. Actually, it's not in your working directory, so you can direct this to show whatever directory you want. I could click over here. That's not my working directory. Okay, but the point is that you can look at files here, and you can kind of go, putzing around in the directory and open things. So that's nice. It's going to have a little tab for your plots. So if I plot 1 to 10, it's going to show up there. It's going to have a tab. You can see all the packages you have installed, and you're going to be able to install new packages. So I can type something right here, and I can install that right from here. You're going to be able to update your packages. Then you've got a nice little tab here for your help. So if I'm over here and I have files clicked and I say $LM, which is to call up the help for a linear regression, boom, that's going to show up over here in the help tab. All right. So you can see it's got it's a nice platform. It's got everything everything that you need to interact with when you're working with R code. You don't really have to leave this platform ever. Okay, so now let's look at the project feature in RStudio. So we're going to go here, and so now we're working on this idea about compartmentalize, keeping our projects as they're in their own folder. They have all their own information. We're not going to be kind of mixing projects. So we're going to create this new project we're going to work on, and let's say, go here, we say new project. No, don't save. Okay, here we go. And we're going to do a new directory. And we're just going to click new project. And it is going to be in my home file. Let's figure out where I want to put this. Yeah, that's fine. Cancel home directory. And I'm just going to give this a name. Did I tell you to give this anything? We'll just call it test. Okay. So now you can see up in this corner here what project I have open. If I were to go to my documents over here, you're going to see that I now have this folder called test. So all the code that I'm going to create is going to be up here in this folder. You can see it's got that little cube there with R, and that is the file that has information about this project. We're going to see things get added to this folder as I work. Okay. All right. So now what we're going to do is we have this project, and it doesn't have anything in it. You can see here over in the files, it doesn't have anything there. So let's add something. So we're going to go click over here and up in the top left, and I'm going to click R script. And then I gave you some sample R code to put in there, so I'm just going to go and grab that. So I'm clicking back over to my web page, and I'm going to copy. Oops, copy that. Copy my code. Okay, now I'm going back over to RStudio. Okay, and now I'm going to post this code into my script. Boom. And maybe I'll save this script. I don't really have to, but I'm going to. And I'm just going to call it test. Okay, great. And now you can see over in the file that that's now showed up here. All right, so now, now I want to run this code. And RStudio has these options right up here in your little code area. And make this a little bigger. Okay. So if I hit source, I'm going to run all of this. Boom. Error. Oh, fine. Okay. I'm on a small laptop, so I have to make that small. Oh, come on. Why are you doing that? I'm on a small. I'm using this on a bigger computer. Okay, there we go. Okay. That particular example of a plot, it looks terrible on a teeny little laptop screen like that. But you can get the idea here. So I've run this script, and the plot appears over here in the plot area. If I just want to run particular lines of code, what I can do is I can highlight those and then just hit run. And what I want you to do is watch down in the console area when I do that. So this is going to show up like that. So that's really the basics that you need to get started with RStudio. You know, add your scripts and then, you know, start running them. In later weeks, you're going to see much more complex projects in RStudio. This is just to get you started if you're not using it, and so you can follow along with the later weeks. Okay. Now I am heading over. I'm going to take a quick pause here and answer a few questions here. Okay. Yeah. So someone asked if there are any syntax errors or other errors. Will RStudio highlight those to help you debug? Yes, it will. Let's see if I can. Yes. So here I'm going to, let's see if I can make this happen. Okay, so I'm creating this function, and then I say if x equals 1, and now I'm going to put an extra thing there, and oh, you can see it's got this x here. And I can hover over that x, and it tells me that there's something wrong. It's not very helpful in this case. In other cases, it's more helpful. But I will say that with time, you'll get used to its little sort of error warnings, and you'll be able to guess. So like I look at unexpected end of document, I know, oh, okay, I don't have a matching parenthesis somewhere. But then it has this helpful feature where I can click next to a parentheses, and you can see it's highlighted, this one up here. So it tells me which parentheses it thinks goes together. And then, you know, here I can see, oh, okay, that goes together, and then I click there, and nothing is graying out, so I can see, aha, I've got a problem, that one's not matched. So I use that all the time for that. Another feature is to figure out, like, when you have, or sort of a debugging feature, are these little arrows, and you can do that. Okay. If it has an error nested within a script, it will print out but keep running. No, it would, if it hits an error, it's going to stop. Well, oh no, right, yeah, it'll keep running. Yeah, no, that's a problem. Yeah, if you like source your whole script and then and you're not paying attention, yeah, no, that's a problem. You have to kind of go more kind of line by line. Okay, so great. I'm gonna move on to the next section. If you have more questions, you can put those on there, and I will get to those. Okay, so talk a little bit about some really helpful features of RStudio that I use a lot. Okay, so one thing is this: if you go into Edit and you look at Find in Files, this is something, it's just, oh, it's so helpful. You search all the files in your, whatever folder you want. You can search all of them on your computer and for whatever you're looking for. So I use this all the time when I've got like a big thing and like maybe I've decided, oh, you know, I want to change this variable name. And then I just search for that variable in all my files, and then I can change them. And so here, let's see, I'm going to look up GTL, and you'll see it's going to pop up here, and it's going to show me where it appears. In this case, it's only one file, but you can imagine I had lots of files. All the files would show there. But then I can double click, and it'll go right to where that appears. So that's super helpful if it's in lots of files. Just click on that. Okay, that's a cool feature. Another cool feature I use a lot is if you look under code, I tell you, like, pretty much all these things I have never used except in all my years of coding. But I use the comment on comment lines a lot. You can select code, a big block of code, and comment it out. That's great. And then you can clean up your code by re-indenting lines. Okay, great. Somebody asked if I don't see the run button, it may be the sizing of your window. So like if I make this window really small, this just turns into the button. You got to make that a little bigger to see your run there. Okay. And let's see, another really cool thing about things that you might not know about out of there is, let's see here. If you go to the help file and you go down, all right, okay. If you scroll down to the bottom and you click index, you're going to see the help for all the functions in that package, which can be super helpful if you're like, you can't quite remember the name, but you know it's in that package. Okay, and then lastly, another really handy thing here is if you go to new file, you're going to see it shows you all these options here. So it'll open up a template that I use that all the time for like R Markdown. You know, it just, you know, put me right into the template for that. And then lastly, under help, you've got these cheat sheets here. That can be handy. And then you have your R Markdown quick reference. We're going to use that a lot when we talk about R Markdown in later weeks. All right, so let's move along to the next section, which is, let's get going with Git. Okay. All right. So Git. I remember when you know, I was going through that period. I was asking people about kind of things they did that were really helpful, and pretty much, you know, people kept talking about Git, and I would try Git, and then I would suffer, and I was like, I don't have time for this, wasting my time, just because I kept, you know, suffering interacting with it, and so I finally, what I did is I got a friend, it's actually Eric Ward, and I said, Eric, I just keep having trouble with this. I just want to sit next to you, and I want to watch you interact with Git, and in this case, GitHub. And I just sat next to him for 10 minutes, and I was like, man, it is so easy. Why? Why did I think this was so hard? I was just doing it wrong. And so that's my objective today, is to kind of show you a workflow to make it easy. And then many of you will run into troubles getting your computer connected to GitHub or GitLab. I can guarantee that, because that's the hard part. And hopefully I'll be able to help you out. But if you follow this workflow I'm going to show, it tends to be robust. Not going to say there won't be problems. There will be problems, but this tends to be a robust way to go. Okay, so let's go back over here. No, stop. All right, so now we're going over here to Git. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about terminology. Okay, repo, that is just shorthand for repository. It's your code, and then the record of all your changes. And a really key thing to know is that there's this hidden folder called .git, and that's got all the information, where it's got all the history of your changes, but it also has information of like what remote repository, so like GitHub or GitLab that you're connected to, has that information in there. So, and I tell you that because it can be tempting sometimes to just like copy the whole, like if you wanted to copy a repo that's on a local version on your computer, you might just want to copy the whole folder, and you will run into trouble with that, because that little hidden Git folder has got all this information in it. So you don't want to do it that way. Okay. Okay, so that's the repository is your code, and then that hidden file with all that info. Git is the program that's keeping track of the changes and sort of keeps track of kind of what your local repository is. Local means that that's on like whatever computer you're working on, and remote would be like GitHub or GitLab. It's sort of out in the cloud that you're interacting with. You don't have to have a remote repository, but in most cases you would. Okay, and then the Git GUI is the thing that's interacting with Git. So I'm going to be showing you RStudio's Git GUI. We're going to interact with Git within RStudio. And then hopefully I'll have time and I'll get to Github Desktop. And that's another really popular GUI to interact with Git. I think to get started, I mean, probably you can just use RStudio's Git GUI. That's fine. When you start to have a lot of repositories like I do, and maybe you're interacting with like GitHub and GitLab, it can be really helpful to have a separate GUI outside of RStudio. You can see it's got kind of got that teeny little window, and it's a little irritating, I find. Okay. So let me go over the basic workflow. When you get started, you want to work with Git. And when you get started, you're going to keep things super simple, okay? You just have your own project. You'll be the only person making commits. You're not going to work in a team, not going to do branches. All you're going to do is try to record your changes and then push those up to the remote. So I would say just do that for a while till you're really comfortable with that. And so you're going to have three elements here. So you've got your RStudio project, and then you're going to have this local repository. So that's going to be recording all your history, your changes. And then, like I said, you could just have that, right? You could just use that and just use that to record your changes. But often we are also pushing those changes up to a remote repository that is backing it up, but also often we're working in a team, and so other people need to see our code, or we may have other reasons, you know, to put it onto the remote. For example, we're sharing with the public. We're sharing with that doesn't have to be public, anyone. Share with anyone, like a team member. Okay, so we've got RStudio, and when we do a commit, we're just committing to our local repository, and then when we push, we're going to push those changes up to our copy that's in our remote repository. So that's up on the web, so like GitHub or GitLab. And then we can pull, and the pulling would be pulling that into our project. Now, I've put the pull in the dots there because we're going to focus mainly on just kind of pushing our changes up. That's what we're going to try to do today. We're going to have to do a little pulling, though, in the beginning. Okay, so first foray to get started. I'm going to show you a super simple workflow here. Okay, so when you first get started, what you want to do is you need to get GitHub. When I say GitHub, you can replace this with GitLab, okay? It just means remote repository. Okay, so you need to get GitHub and your computer talking together, and there's some kind of security and credentials that need to all match up. And in my experience, the best way to do this is you're going to first create a blank repository on GitHub, and you're going to pull that into your into RStudio in this case. Okay, great. So let's see that. I'm just going to do that. Okay, so I got GitHub here. Oh. Okay. All right, done. Here we go. Okay. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to GitHub here. It's my GitHub site, and I'm going to create a repository over here. If you're working in GitLab, it's going to be a green button that says Create Project. So I'm going to say New Repository. There we go. That's this. Okay. I don't need to put the description there. Public, private, that doesn't matter either. What matters is I need to click this, initialize this repository with a README. You're going to see the same sort of button in GitLab. I'm going to click that. You don't have to add a .gitignore, but I'm going to, because it's going to make my life easier later. And I want to do the R one. There's a million, so it's a little easier. Just type R, click that. There we go. Okay, great. So now I have it. Next step. Go up here and grab the URL. Just hit copy, so I've copied that. Now I've done the lines here. I've gone to GitHub, and I've created a new repository. I clicked README, Add Me, and I've copied the URL. So I've done steps 1 through 3. And now I'm going to RStudio, and I'm going to add this in. So let's go back to RStudio. Okay. So now, hopefully you can see RStudio. I'm pausing a little here. I know there's a delay. Now I'm going up to the corner here. Okay, there's a question about what does commit mean, and you're going to see that in just a moment. Okay, so now I'm going to go up to New Project. I hit New Project. Oh, Save Selected. Okay, fine. And now you see at the bottom here, it says version control. I'm going to do that. I clicked on version control, and now I'm going to click on Git, and it asks me for the URL. I'm going to paste that in. The directory name, okay, that's all good. Where it's going to create this. So that tilde means just my documents, but I actually have a special folder that's just for my GitHub. I keep GitHub and GitLab separate because they have very different purposes. Because I work for NOAA, GitHub is like my public stuff. GitLab is kind of internal. This is a GitHub one. Class, so I'm going to select that. So it's going to put it in that subdirectory. And now I create. All right. Okay, super. Now I have created it. Okay. I see some questions here. Somebody says, I see Git was not detected. You need to install either GitHub Desktop. That's what I recommend, because that's going to get you all the things that you need. Or you would install either Git for Mac or Git for Windows. If you Google that, it's going to show you how to install that. So that's what's going on there. You need to install it. And question about how do you get the r.gitignore in GitLab? I don't know how you get the r.gitignore in GitLab. You don't have to do the gitignore. And there are some questions of people getting the same error message. I'm going to have to deal with that at the end. I'm going to kind of walk through, but definitely tell me the errors that you're having with connecting, because I can kind of collect those and then put that on the website to help other people to get connected, because everyone's system is kind of different. When you install GitHub Desktop, it should have installed everything you need, but there may be some permission issues going on. Okay, but let me just keep walking through this, how this works when everything works. Okay, so now that I have created this project using a URL from my own GitHub or my own GitLab, this is important. I didn't do somebody else's. I created it on my own. I now see this tab called Git. That just appeared. RStudio detected that I'm doing version control. And now we can start making some changes and start committing those changes to our local repository. So when I say repository, that's all my code plus all the changes I have ever made. So let's go ahead and do this. So now we're going to create a file. So I'm going to take, say, RScript. Going to create that. And I'll type something there. A equals 1, A. That's my script. I'm going to save it. Okay, so now you see it tells me these things that have been added. So what you want to do is so these changes have been made, but because they appear here, what it's telling you is they're not in your Git repository. That means there's no history of these changes. And so it's not doing it automatic. It's not like automatically every change is pushing it. It's going to wait till you're ready. So maybe I'm not ready yet. Oh, I'd like to make a few more changes. Which 2 and C, and I want to get rid of that. Okay. So I've done a bunch of work, and now I'm ready to record my changes. How often you record changes is up to you. I kind of work until I get to I don't know. I guess it really changes. Sometimes it's like I'll do a ton of work before I commit. Sometimes I'm like committing constantly. It really kind of depends how much history that I feel I need for whatever I'm working on. Okay, but now let's say we're ready. We want to record these changes, and I could select both of these. Actually, I'm just going to do one. I'm just going to do this first. So I'm going to, okay. So I'm going to select this change, and then I'm going to say commit. So what I'm doing is I've made a change, and by commit, I'm saying I am adding this to my history. So what am I adding? And I'm doing the one that's just checked here, and I'm just going to say there's nothing special. I'm just adding the project. RStudio. This note is for you. It's kind of whatever is info you want. You're going to be able to search this info later, so keep that in mind. If you're doing, a big project, and sometimes you want to add more info because you want to be able to search that later to find things. Other times it's just like something minor, so you don't add much info. So now I commit that. Okay, and now I have this one. I don't have to do them singly. I could do a whole bunch of changes. I'm just showing you an example where we want to have a different message for different changes. And I'm just saying I added close. Okay, great. So let's close this window. And now you'll see, aha, it's gone, right? So what it means is that there are no changes that haven't been put into my history. Okay, so they're on my local, in my local repository history. But if I go back to GitHub and I look, they wouldn't be there. So I'm clicking over to GitHub. And here's my GitHub, and you can see they're not there yet. Going to go back to RStudio. Okay, I'm back in RStudio, and now I'm going to push them up to the remote. So push means to go from your local repository up to the remote, and that's the green arrow there. Boom, I push it. Thinking. Close. And it did it. So let's go back, and now let's look here. Reload that. Okay. And now you see those files are up here. And I can go over to my commits, that, and I can see the history of what I've done. Let's go back to RStudio, and let's make a few more changes so I can show you some nice features of the history. So I'm just going to add some more changes to foo equals, I'm going to add a new file. At foo2.r. Okay. Great. Now you can see over in, I've got my changes now, and the M means I've modified it. It doesn't know yet what this is. It will when I put it there. A means it's, how did that, modifying that. Let's commit. And I've got these both clicked, so I'm going to do them together. More files. This is totally not very useful, but this would be the subject line. I can add more details by doing a new line here, and added test files with A and okay. Submit. Boom. Did it. All right, so now I've made a couple things, and I go into history and show you some nice things here. You can do things like you can search changes. So let's search foo. And it shows anytime I added foo to my commit. And we can view the file at that point in time. So this is like a really cool feature of using this version control, is you can go back in time and view what the file looked like when you made that change. And that is a really helpful feature for your code. I don't know, how many times I'm making tons of changes, and then I'm like, oh my God, when did I mess up this file? Like what was I did these big changes. What did it look like before I made those changes? And if you're using Git and you're recording your changes, you can go back in time, and any point in time, months and months back, and you can see the version of this file in back in time. And you could revert back to that if you wanted, but a lot of times all you need to do is just see what it looked like, and then you can figure out, oh, okay, I deleted that bit of code, actually I want that, and you just copy it, add it back in, something like that. So it's just really, really helpful to document your code in this way. Okay, so great. I see I have tons of questions, and it looks to me like most of these are having to do with getting connected. Yeah, okay. Getting everything talking together. Okay. Keep posting your questions. I'll try to get to them, but I'm going to jump a little bit now ahead to key tips. Okay, so getting started. So first off, I told you when you start, make the repository on GitHub or GitLab, pull it into RStudio, and get everything talking together in a simple case. Once everything is talking together, it tends to run smoothly. But that first stage, getting it all talking together, can be a bit of a headache. Don't give up. Just get through that. But again, start simple. Just make a blank repository and get that talking with RStudio. Secondly, it can be really tempting to make changes directly on GitHub and GitLab because they have this like edit version and edit option. And I really strongly suggest you don't do that in the beginning because you'll get something, it's really easy to get something called a merge conflict where the changes that are up on GitHub don't match what's on your local repository, so on your computer, your own computer, and then you've got to solve those conflicts, and it just isn't a headache. So just in the beginning, resist that urge to edit on GitHub or GitLab directly. Don't use branches in the beginning. Really start simple, get everything working, get familiar with it. Another tip, don't use Git at the command line to begin with. Or if you do use it at the command line, just use kind of info things. Don't like actually try to like do things to your repository. Not in the beginning, because you can cause yourself a lot of headaches. For those of you who use Dropbox or something like iCloud, so this wouldn't be, on your NOAA computer because you can't use those. But like if you're in your personal computer or student, the variety of people here, don't want to have your Git repositories in your Dropbox folders. You don't want things syncing kind of automatically across computers outside of the whole push-pull mechanism. That just creates a lot of problems. Yeah, okay, great. So last thing, just got 5 minutes, I want to quickly show you on GitHub Desktop, just so you see how you interact with that. And maybe why people might use it. Like I said, when you begin, I think it's totally fine just to use Git within RStudio. But a lot of people will use another Git GUI to interact with Git, even if they use RStudio. And GitHub Desktop is really simple. So now I've opened up GitHub Desktop. And despite the name, this will work fine with GitLab. Okay, so and GitHub Desktop is pretty simple, but I find it's plenty fine for what I do. All right, so let's see. And kind of to make it a lot bigger, like I said, it's kind of annoying with RStudio. You're trying to work in this little box, and if you have lots of repositories, you often want to jump between them a lot, and so you can't do that in RStudio. I think that's a really big thing. It's like when you want to jump between repositories, you really would like to have a standalone Git GUI. So here is sort of what mine looks like. You see it has all my repositories on here. And I can add a new repository. So I made test that, and it's a local repository. And it's also on GitHub. I add it either from GitHub or from locally. Since I have it locally, I'm just going to do it that way. So I add local repository, and then I navigate to that. Test this, select, add. So now it's here. I can look at the history, and I can just kind of jump around and see everything. I can push. You can see that there's a change that hasn't been pushed up. It's actually the last change here. You can see it has this arrow. It tells me that I haven't pushed those changes yet. And now I can just push that up. And there we go. Now, if I want to jump to a different repository, it's really easy to do that. So this is for the website. I can jump over there. I can look at all the history, etc., jump around. Okay. So you can see that, you know, if you've got a lot of repositories, you need to be looking at different things. This makes it really, really easy. Okay, I'm going to stop there and stop my whirlwind tour, and I'll go ahead and take questions that you have. Questions or comments? Jump back over to here. Okay. Okay, so there was a question, if you're new to R, is there a good beginner book that you can recommend? Yes. So, well, first off, there are like a lot of online tutorials, and I think I've got some links over here. If you go on More Tools Links on the website, yeah, never worked with R. I have some tutorials here. There's this kind of fun package called Swirl that walks you through all these tutorials. So you don't have to be online, just download the package. It's going to walk you through a bunch of tutorials. But I have a book that that I really like and that I recommend to all my ecologist friends. See if I can. Yeah. It's this book right here. It's the R Student Companion. And it's really easy to work through. And it's written by an ecologist, so it's going to, it'll feel really familiar to you, and you'll get up to speed really fast. So if you get one book to learn, I would just start with that. And after you do that, and so you're familiar with it, then I would say like going to, I put a link here of kind of more exercises. There is the R for Data Science, which I think is a really great one to work through after you've gotten started with R. Okay, so let's see. What does GitLab look like? Let's see. Now I've got my GitLab open right here, and yeah, that's what it looks like. If I clicked on repository, that's just a copy of all the information for the course. You can see it's got kind of the same things. I click on the repository. I can then, over here, it says commits. That's kind of my history there. You can see all the different things that have been committed. It's really very similar to GitHub. And it's nice. We have a internal GitLab at the center. You can contact Marcus Needleman to get an account. And so you have access to all this for your projects. It's on a NOAA server, it's private. So, you know, all these sort of restrictions and concerns about like putting things on a non-NOAA site that's publicly oriented wouldn't apply. So like if I have a project that, you know, I'm working on the status review, say, and I want that code, you know, I would have that on GitLab, obviously, right? That's private. Okay. Question, would it have mattered if you added that repository in GitHub for Windows from the remote versus the local version? Okay, I think you're talking about GitHub Desktop. Yeah, no, it would not have mattered. I happen to have it already locally, so I did it locally. If I didn't, I would do clone repository. Yeah, so that would be adding a repository that I just have on GitHub. I think that I may do a separate session on like more complicated things with GitHub or GitLab. They're really the same, how you interact with them. I may do a separate session, or maybe I'll just put a bunch of information on the website. Just sort of, and I have some of that information on there. You can see one of the links of, you know, how to do things. You can also ask me. Just the one tip I will say is if you create things on GitHub or GitLab first and then pull it in, make the changes and push, use that workflow, you're gonna make your life a lot easier, okay? A lot less misery. Trying to create something local and then push it up, a lot more headaches. I don't know why, it's just a lot more headaches if you do it that way. All right, so, okay. I'm just going to be going through questions. Feel absolutely free, just sort of drop off. Next week, I'm going to be talking about some coding tips, how to make your code more robust. Just kind of a variety, grab bag of things. I'll probably put some more GitHub stuff there, GitLab stuff there. So it's coding tips, and then the third week is going to be about R Markdown and how to work with that. And I'm going to be specifically addressing things that are applicable to us as NOAA scientists, interacting with data, making big tables, reproducible research as it applies to kind of our report stuff. And then the fourth week will be how to make R packages and why you want to do that. I encourage you to listen in on the R packages one, even if you think, I don't ever want to make an R package. If you're doing a lot of coding, trust me, probably want to be doing R packages. It's not about making things for the public. I do it just for my own personal code too. It's about making robust, documented code that's really compartmentalized. Okay, great. Okay, so see you all. I'm going to stay on here and just be answering questions. But I hope to see some of you, yeah, next week. All right, okay, questions. Yay, here. Okay. How did you open that RStudio comment review window? Okay, so let's go back here. Okay, so I'm on RStudio, and I'm at the Git tab. And that little thing, icon that looks like a watch, that says View History. You can get it from there, so I can click that, and it's going to pop up. Okay, and now once I'm here, I want to click History. Oh wait, sorry, that's mine. Okay, here it changes, and now I have this little search button that I can use. You do that, or another way you can do it is you see all the changes. You can then just click on one of them like that, and it's going to show up in the bottom here. The other way you can get to that history is if you click the commit button, then this pop-up window is going to show up. All right. Okay. Any other questions here? I see 2 books with the same name. R for Data Science. I think the book is Hadley. I put a link in on the web page. If you look under, it says like more exercises. It's going to give you a link to the online book. Version control, Garfield's get executable. Yeah, okay. Thank you to Douglas Draper who posted this information. I'll put this up on the website. And I'll add this to the instructions. So for RStudio, you may need to tell RStudio where Git is. So you need to point it to your Git executable. And I'll put that up on the website. Thanks for that. And any comments that you have, like in getting Git all connected together, you can go ahead and email those. That's really helpful for me to see what it took for you to get connected. For me, because I've been using it for so long, I may not even think about the steps that I did, even though, I had this. This is a new work computer. I actually set this up for the workshop. But I like this thing, like connecting RStudio and telling it where Git is. I probably did that and didn't even think about it. All right, super. Okay, Brian Burke asks, how do you restore an entire file? There are a few different answers to that, depending what platform you're using. And RStudio probably has an option where you can click on the commit and say revert. And so what you're doing is you're getting rid of your changes. Let's see if in GitHub Desktop, see if I can show you an example. So I'm going to go to test that. Okay, so here's this where I added these changes, and so I've highlighted that, and I just right-clicked, and you can see it says revert this commit. So let's first go over to RStudio and look at my files. I want to, close these out. Okay. So I've got those files over here. I've got foo and I've got foo2. Now I'm going to go here. I'm going to right-click and I say revert. So what it's saying is saying get rid of this commit. go back to the way it was. And you can see it just reverted that. I haven't pushed those changes up to GitHub. You can see it's got the little arrow there. It's telling me it's not pushed up to the remote. They're not synced together. But let's look locally. Aha, it's gone. So I just got rid of that change. Now, you can see there that I had to revert the whole change. And that is why, like, I couldn't just do one of the files. I couldn't just revert through. So this is why you don't want to just like check every single change that you made and put in one commit, because if you revert, you're going to have to revert all of them. So like what I'll do is, like, if let's say I'm doing a change that applies to a few different files, but that change is like I'm changing the name of a variable and it's across a few files. So I would click all the files that are associated with that change, and then I would say change name of variable, and then I commit that. If I need to go back and revert that, I can revert that, and all I'm doing is affecting those files where I changed the variable names. Okay, so now you can see they're gone, and then, but I haven't pushed it, and now let's say I'm like, oh, no, I didn't want to do that. Let's get rid of that. So now I reverted that revert, and now they're back again. So you can see I can kind of go back and forth. And you can see it's, it's really easy at GitHub Desktop. In RStudio, I'm sure I can do the same thing. I just don't use that platform as often. All right. Okay, everyone. Have a great weekend. I'm going to sign off. And stopping to share. Stop.